a lot recently about how newly elected Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota doesn't like Israel, and that's definitely true. She does not like Israel. But you've heard next to nothing about how Omar doesn't like this country. Omar dislikes Israel probably more than she dislikes Israel. This doesn't seem to bother anybody. It should. Here's what Omar recently told Vogue Arabia in an interview. She described living in the United States as, quote, an everyday assault. America is so racist and hateful, she says, that she feels, quote, threatened, demonized, and vilified every day. It's difficult for her even to go to work. In many ways, things were easier growing up in a refugee camp in Kenya, she says. Quote, when you're a kid and you're raised in an all-black, all-Muslim environment, nobody really talks to you about your identity. You just are. There is freedom in knowing that you are accepted as your full self, unquote. That freedom, Omar says, doesn't exist in America. So pause and think about that for a second. Ilhan Omar's country collapsed as a child. She lived for years in Kenya in that refugee camp. She may have died there without outside help, but help came from where? From here, America. And this country didn't just welcome Ilhan Omar to America. We paid to relocate her family and many others from a foreign continent purely for the sake of being good people, for altruism. Because no country in history has been as generous as we are to places we have no ties to and no obligation to. We've been kind anyway because that's who we are. Despite her humble and foreign birth, Omar has been elected to our national lawmaking body, and good for her. So how does she repay her adopted country, the one that may literally have saved her life? She attacks it as hateful and racist. And for that, she is applauded by the Democratic Party because they view this country as hateful and racist, too. The more Ilhan Omar's America has, they believe, the better. But is that what's best for America? Here's another suggestion we should think about. Maybe our immigration system should prioritize people who actually like this country and are grateful to be here. Why wouldn't we do that? Well, in just a few months, the Democratic Party has become way more radical on abortion than any party on earth. New York has legalized abortion up until the moment of birth, literally the moment. In Virginia, the governor there, Ralph Northam, defended infanticide, and that was barely a scandal. Democrats were far more upset about his face paint 30 years ago. Is that in step with what America wants? The movie Unplanned, a pro-life movie, did very well at the box office this past weekend, far above expectations, despite having its Twitter account briefly shut down with no explanation, though of course you know what the explanation is. And then in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, the state legislature there just banned abortions conducted based on a child's sex, race, or disabilities. That law was immediately challenged by the ACLU, which no longer has anything to do with civil liberties. But we thought it was a fascinating step, and so we're grateful to talk tonight to Matt Bevin. He is the sitting governor of Kentucky. He signed that bill. Governor, thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Great to be here with you, Tom.
So a bill that bans abortion on the basis of sex, disabilities, or race, you wouldn't think you would need a bill like that because you wouldn't think someone would do something that horrifying.
And yet, sadly, they do. And this is a non-eugenics bill, essentially saying you cannot kill a child based on its race, its gender, or a perceived disability. Ironically, intentionally aligning very specifically with a lot of federal statutes, in whether it's the ADA or other things that literally prevent and are defended by the ACLU in people who are outside the womb. But they felt that was too much to expect of a child who has not yet been delivered. And it is reprehensible. The Guild, to your point
so
earlier,
they're against defending a child, a fetus as they call it, on the basis of race? Really?
Yeah, I mean,
it's okay to have a race-selective abortion?
You can kill a child, and by their estimation, they think it's a step too far to say that you should not kill a child based on its race, or its gender, or some perceived disability. It is, to your point, this Guild has come off the lily of it being rare and safe and legal. They don't care about that anymore. It never was intended to be rare. It is now literally when and how ever somebody would want to see this happen. And so it's reprehensible to me that you have the ACLU just not even trying to serve its past defense of civic liberties and literally attacking a bill that is on its face something that we should applaud.
Sex-selective abortions are very widespread across the world. It's one of the reasons India and China have so many more boys than girls, rather. And it targets girls. Is there any support for sex-selective abortion in this country? Have you seen the polling? Is there like 40% of the population just has to have their sex-selective abortion?
Sadly, it is done,
yes.
to what degree it is supported by the general populace, I think people would be offended at
yes.
this, and for good reason. And I applaud. We have legislators in Kentucky who are leading the charge on this boldly. We have young young Senator Matt Caslin, who sponsored a bill related to the heartbeat at 6 weeks, or whenever a heartbeat is first detected, that an abortion beyond that could not be performed in Kentucky. That also was immediately challenged. Melinda Prunty was the one who sponsored this bill that you're talking about, this non-eugenics bill.
Did you get any Democrats to support it?
There were. In Kentucky, I tell you this, in America, increasingly, the more we know about medicine, the more we know about science, the more we know about what really is happening inside of the womb, it is evident that that is a human being. That child is not going to be born and come out as a chicken or something. I mean, this is a human being. Nobody is under the impression it's anything other than that. And the more we look with technology, the more we know this to be true.
So Planned Parenthood, as a matter of policy, supports sex-selective abortion. Is it a little weird to get lectures about morality from people who align with Planned Parenthood?
Here's the thing. Think about the history of Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood, was one of the greatest apologists 100 years ago for eugenics,
yes.
which believed that removing unfavorable people, people that were unpleasant, people that would water down the gene pool of humanity, people who were immigrants, people who were of color, people who were poor, people that were disabled. She felt that these were undesirable character traits and that they needed to be removed from the human gene pool. She was the founder of Planned Parenthood. So the idea that 100 years later they still give awards in her name and that they are still practicing the very same thing should not be shocking.
They are, and that's why they put the Planned Parenthood clinics in the inner city. They still feel that way.
Targeting.
Governor Bevin, we're grateful to have you tonight. Thank you for that. Racial segregation, amazingly, one of the worst things this country ever did, is coming back, courtesy of the left. What do past victims of segregation think?